The 1920s. It's one of those decades that's just a whirlwind. It's got these incredible highs and these absolutely devastating lows. And everything is happening so fast, it's hard to keep track. It was a time of wild optimism, but also really deep conflict. And it all ended in a spectacular collapse. So, how did a decade that was all about prosperity end in total despair? Let's dive in and really unpack the boom and bust of the Roaring Twenties. And really, if you want to get to the heart of this decade, you have to start right here with President Calvin Coolidge. This one quote just says it all. After the incredible sacrifice of World War I, America kind of just turned inward. The focus wasn't on the world's problems anymore. It was on one thing: chasing happiness through making money.
But at the very same time, you've got this guy, another voice that was defining the era. Al Capone, the most famous gangster in Chicago, saw himself as, well, just a businessman. He was just supplying a demand, right? And that is the central paradox of the 1920s. You have a country that's publicly all about one set of morals, while behind closed doors, it's living a completely different reality.
All right, so let's start with what was driving everyone. The war was over, and America was just done with sacrifice and saving. The whole country basically turned its back on the world's problems and instead went all in on a brand new, super fast-paced, and totally modern American dream. And this dream, wow, it had a roaring soundtrack. What's so amazing is how all these things were connected. Think about it. The car wasn't just a way to get around. It gave the flapper the freedom to drive herself to a jazz club. The radio didn't just play music. It created this shared national culture where millions of people could listen to the exact same thing at the exact same time. And the movies? At its peak, almost 100 million tickets were sold every week. That's nearly one for every single person in the country. But here's the most important part. This new modern world wasn't just for the rich. That's the real game changer. Mass production meant a Ford Model T was rolling off the line every 10 seconds. And thanks to a brand new idea, buying on credit, you could get one for just $5 a week. For the first time, the middle class could own a piece of the modern world. Okay, but underneath all that partying and roaring celebration, some really deep cracks were starting to show in American society. The decade's obsession with having a good time was really just masking this powerful undercurrent of anxiety, of hypocrisy, and of conflict. So let's pull back the curtain and look at what was really going on. And nothing shows you the hypocrisy of the era better than this. Prohibition was supposed to be this great social experiment, right? Meant to make America a more moral, sober country. Well, the reality was the complete opposite. It didn't stop people from drinking. It just made criminals out of ordinary citizens and handed a multi-billion-dollar industry over to gangsters like Al Capone. Just get a load of this number: 100,000 illegal bars in New York City alone. This wasn't some fringe thing. It was a massive, nationwide rejection of the law. You had rum runners smuggling booze down the coast. You had the local speakeasy. A whole underground economy was booming, all based on this one massive contradiction. And the social landscape was just as split. I mean, the decade starts with this huge step forward. The 19th Amendment finally gives women the right to vote. But at the exact same time, a really ugly side of America was making a comeback. The Ku Klux Klan had this massive revival, and it wasn't just targeting African Americans anymore. Now its hate was aimed at the new waves of Catholic and Jewish immigrants, too.
And this backlash, it wasn't just on the streets, it was written into law. The Immigration Act of 1924 was a direct result of these fears that immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe were somehow a threat. So it set up this quota system that was specifically designed to favor Northern Europeans. It basically slammed the door shut for millions of people.
So, with all this focus on what was happening at home, on business, on pleasure, on prejudice, America was turning its back on the rest of the world. And while the nation was looking inward, the stage was being set for the next massive global conflict. You know that old idea from George Washington's farewell address, no entangling alliances? That was the mantra. After the absolute horror of World War I, Americans had zero interest in President Wilson's ideas about international cooperation. Congress rejected the League of Nations. The message couldn't have been clearer. Europe's problems were Europe's problems. And what a time to be looking away. While America was dancing the Charleston, the seeds of World War II were being planted. Mussolini and his fascists took power in Italy. A young Adolf Hitler made his first violent grab for control in Germany. And in the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin began his bloody rise to the top. America was ignoring the world at a very, very dangerous moment.
You know, a decade this turbulent, this extreme, it's going to have some larger-than-life characters. And it sure did. The public became obsessed with a new kind of celebrity hero, but they were just as fascinated by the juicy scandals of the rich and powerful.
These were the people who just captured everyone's imagination. In an age that was actually pretty anxious, guys like Babe Ruth and Charles Lindbergh felt like true heroes, symbols of what one person could achieve. And then you had artists like F. Scott Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. They weren't just entertainers, they were defining the soul of the jazz age, giving it a name and a sound we still know today. But yeah, for every hero, there was a villain. The Teapot Dome scandal completely shook the Harding administration. It revealed corruption that went all the way to the top of the government. The Secretary of the Interior got caught taking bribes for oil leases on public land. It proved that, yeah, the business of America was business, but some of that business was just plain dirty. For almost the entire decade, it really felt like the party would never stop. The stock market became the ultimate symbol of American success. It seemed like a place where literally anyone could get rich, and get rich fast. That optimism turned into a full-blown speculative fever. And this is how it was all possible. Buying on margin. It was so incredibly dangerous. It let regular people borrow enormous amounts of money to gamble on the stock market. You could pay as little as 10% of a stock's actual price. The entire system was basically a house of cards, built on the belief that the market could only go up.
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, everything. It all started with a little bit of panic in mid-October. Then, on October 29th, Black Tuesday, the bottom just fell out. Everyone tried to sell their stocks at once. $15 billion in wealth, poof, gone, vanished. The life savings of millions of people wiped out in a single day. And by November, just a month later, 3 million people were already out of work. The party was officially over. So, why? Why did it all fall apart? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was basically a perfect storm. You had a stock market that was a massive bubble, held up by nothing but pure speculation. You had high taxes on imported goods that were meant to help American businesses, but they actually backfired and just choked off world trade. But maybe the biggest reason was this fundamental imbalance. The people making all this stuff were getting rich, but the people who were supposed to buy it all just didn't have enough money. Eventually, the whole machine just ground to a halt. And that's really the ultimate question of the 1920s, isn't it? How does a decade that was so obsessed with the pursuit of happiness end in such complete and utter despair? It's a powerful story, a reminder of just how thin that line is between optimism and delusion. And its lessons about debt, division, and speculation still echo pretty loudly today.